everybody. Welcome back to another edition of The Teardown. My name is Jeff Gluck, along with my coworker Jordan Bianchi. We are motorsports writers for The Athletic. And today we're here to talk about the Nashville Super Speedway race. I'm not actually at Nashville Super Speedway anymore. I made a dash for my hotel, Jordan. There's not a lot of podcast room space there. And they generously offered for me to go across the track and do it in the press box. But I just thought I might as well dash my hotel because Jordan, before you broke the schedule last year, you kind of gave me a little leak of what you were going to break. And so I booked a couple hotel rooms, one of which being this one before they could raise the prices, only like 15 minutes from the track. So thanks to you, Jordan, I'm able to go straight back to my hotel right here. No traffic, nothing. So thanks, Jordan. I appreciate that.
I was thinking of you. I always like to go above and beyond. That's the kind of guy I am, an ultimate team player, and always thinking of you, big guy.
Thank you. You're very, very generous.
Yeah,
I was at Nashville. I'm almost close enough to still see the lights in the distance, and it was my first visit to the track, last track that I hadn't been to, so I was very excited about that. Much better, first of all. Much better facility than I was anticipating.
Yeah.
I was thinking, man, they left this place for dead and they brought it back. And, I was impressed. Great crowd.
Sell out.
Sell out. I mean, and look, it's a right-sized crowd, right? So yeah. I think it's 35,000 or something, but that's fine. That's all you need for a NASCAR race, in my opinion. Aside from like Daytona 500 or something. The racing for the most part, I thought it was fine. I don't think it was terrible. I don't think it was amazing, but that the last run, as Denny Hamlin explained, so I thought like stage 2 was really exciting. There were some really good moments there. But Denny Hamlin explained it that in stage 3, they got going on that long run and everybody was running on the bottom of the track. And it was, the tires were like, they have this dust, he was saying, and they were basically, everybody by running the bottom was spraying this dust up into the middle groove. And so anytime somebody would try to go up into the middle groove, I'm sure Denny will go more into this on Actions Detrimental. Everybody, you couldn't run there. So everybody was like locked down to the bottom the whole last run of the race. So pretty much the position you were in, obviously, you knew it was going to be a track position dependent race, but you really couldn't pass that last run. It felt like, I mean, Hocevar was saying it took him, the whole race to pass. Like he felt like 3 cars. He was able to jump people on the pit cycle, but not a ton of passing, obviously. But I don't think it was, bad. I just think it was an average type race. Oh, you seem to think it was bad.
No, it was
by your face.
No, it was perfectly acceptable. I was just going to say it's a concrete track again. I am just not a fan in general of concrete tracks, whether it's here, Dover, Bristol has not been the best. It's just in general. And, I saw some criticism of this track and this race tonight about, this car. It's like, if you look at the era of the next gen car at this track, this has kind of been one of the outliers. It's kind of been one of the outliers where it hasn't been a barn burner. It hasn't been amazing racing. It's a weird track. And it just doesn't fit this car perfectly. So, I mean, tonight really wasn't much different than what we've seen in years past from this race, barring the craziness, a ton of cautions last year at the end, threw everything to a monkey wrench. But in general, this race is kind of played out normal in some respect. And it was fine. Like, and we're going to get hung up on the fact, it wasn't this and there was this. It's like, you're not going to have every race be an amazing, wow race, especially coming off a Charlotte race, which I think we all agree was pretty darn phenomenal, right? I mean, that bar is so high. This was fine. It was a fine race, and there were some good moments in there. It's certainly, stage 2 was really, really good with Byron and Hamlin and Blaney. There were some storylines that obviously came out of this. 1, Blaney finally getting into victory lane. 2, the Carson Hocevar, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. thing, which we'll dive into. It was, the Larson comeback was really noteworthy and really an off night for them in a lot of respects, and they still managed to get out a decent finish. So it was a fine race. It just wasn't. It's not something you're going to look back on and you're like, oh my goodness, number 1. Unless you're a Ryan Blaney fan, it's just kind of shrug your shoulders and move on.
Yeah, it was really odd actually. after the race, everybody disappeared really quickly. I was talking to Kelly Crandall about this. So it was sort of like people bolted fast, like the drivers were kind of out of there. So I don't know how to read that exactly. I don't know if it was because it was a night race or
I would
whatever,
say
but
it's Sunday night at 10 o'clock and people want to get to home and, you know, that kind of thing.
yeah. But yeah, so there were some good storylines in there. I guess we should start with the winner, Ryan Blaney, because look, Blaney was the highest in points this year of the Penske Wood Brothers trio. Yet he was not trio because there's 4 cars. That's 3. Sorry, it's late. Anyway, he was the only one that hadn't won. The other trio, the rest of the trio had. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. The rest of the quartet had Jordan, and he was the one that didn't. Now he wins, and it was like all the time you could see this coming. I mean, it was. I don't think it's any surprise whatsoever that Ryan Blaney's in victory lane. We've talked about him as a championship contender. But he finally finishes one off. This was set up by Jonathan Hassler's pit call, though, at the end of stage 1, right? So Jonathan Hassler, he realized that there was going to be a need for track position, and he was noticing the tires weren't wearing as much, and the lap times weren't going down. So you saw everybody pit in stage 1, and if I have my timing correct here, that was when Blaney ran pretty long, and Blaney was running similar lap times to the leaders at that point. Remember that? Mm-hmm. Like even the guys who had pitted on brand new tires, like Blaney was still running similar lap times. So he got to the end of that window, and I think he ends up pitting with like 20 laps to go or something in that stage. And then at the stage break, they're able to take 2 tires. So next thing you know, he gets a ton of track position, right? And he only has 20 lap older left side tires than the rest of the drivers who had just come in on the stage break. So that set him up to, and he, then he had a great car to top it off. But that really, as it was hard to pass tonight, that was a really key moment there for Blaney.
It was, and to me, there's 2 things there. And you mentioned one of them was Hassler's playing the long game, looking at the tire wear, and like, how do we get our driver up and through this order when it's maybe we don't have the fastest car at that time, or it's a little hard to pass. And he did a really good job of that. And then 2, I don't think we give Blaney enough credit for how good of a driver he is on long runs. Like, you look at most of his wins, go back to Martinsville last fall, go back, look at tonight, are consistent, steady, fast times over a 30+ lap run. That, like, he's not great on short runs. Restarts are usually his bugaboo, right? And it's cost him a couple times this year at Darlington, most notably. It's just not his strong suit. But over a long green flag run, if you give him track position and let him just click off laps, he is as good as it gets. And that was the thing we saw tonight. Was Hassler played the strategy game really, really well. He looked at tire wear, he assessed the situation, and said, what do I need to get my driver up through the order? He did that, and then from there, the way things fell just was really clinical. And Blaney, we saw at the end of stage 2, was able to run people down. At the end of stage 1, stage 3 was able to just long green flag run and just boom, consistent. And even when he got into traffic, it's like he just maintained composure and never kind of struggled.
So where last year at this time, Logano wins his way into the 5 overtime and gets into the playoffs because of that, all that stuff. And we're like, and you had Gateway in there as well. This time around, all 4 of those Penske cars, this is only the 14th race of the regular season. So just past the halfway point, everybody associated with Penske has won a race. Mm-hmm. Seems like they're ahead of the game at this point. How worried should the competition be if, no, you're hesitating?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say, because if you can maintain this if you can tell me that they're going to maintain this, then great. But we have seen, and Penske's the chief example of this, it doesn't necessarily matter what you do right now. It's a matter about getting hot come the playoffs and taking advantage of those opportunities when they come. What I think stands out to me is that the fact that they started the season really, really strong, and they've been good on every single type of track. It's not like they're just, this is the typical short oval dominance at Martinsville and a Phoenix. Like, no, this is intermediate tracks. It's super speedways. Really, road courses has really been their only hiccup this year. And right now they're in a position where they can kind of take some chances of overcoming in the next few road course races. They don't have to worry about points and that kind of thing. So they have consistency out of their organization that we haven't seen necessarily, like the Gibbs cars, for example. Until recently, they were struggling in intermediate racetracks, and they've had some issues, but there has been no tail off from Penske. Now, we don't know what that's going to be like come the playoffs. Who knows? It could be a 23-11 that rises up. It could be a track house. We don't know. And that's going to be the interesting thing.
Well, Carson Hocevar finishes second. It looks like he was going to run about fifth or so, and then he was able to jump a few cars on that final pit cycle, and he was able to at least put himself in contention. He ends up finishing 2.8 seconds behind. He was afterwards very disappointed and subdued, and I was a little bit confused why that was, and I asked him about, what I don't understand. Like, this is only the third top five he's had in Cup. He tied his best career finish, but he's not happy. So he says, I have the quote right here. Basically, he said that when he was a fan, he felt like he really hated it when he saw drivers get out of their car and like act happy that they finished second or third. And he always decided and vowed that if he was ever in that situation, you weren't going to see him be happy to finish second, because in his opinion, he could have erased all of his bad finishes and all of his bad starts of the season with one moment. And so, even though he was second, and he doesn't think he was necessarily better car wise than Blaney, he felt like, it was still really disappointing to finish second. So that said, Hocevar did move up 5 spots in the playoff standings. So he is now 17th. He is now sort of right on the cusp, essentially, of being in contention. Josh Berry has dipped down to 20th in points. So that's the one guy has won a race who's outside. So the playoff cut line, I guess, is 15th right now, I think, Kyle Busch. Mm-hmm. And Hocevar is only 4 points out of the playoffs, if I'm seeing this correctly. So now, obviously, that came with a couple bad nights for other playoff contenders, Ryan Preece, and notably Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who Hocevar was involved in an incident with. So you have Hocevar. It looked like he tried to sort of jam it in there. Maybe overdrove the corner a little bit. I'm not sure how you want to look at it. And Stenhouse, I don't think it sounded like he didn't expect him to be there at that point.
No, he did not.
So he comes down the track. Hocevar says he tries to get out of it. And I'm trying to find his exact quote here, because he says he says, because I said, you could have given Stenhouse a break, right? Like that's what the announcers were saying, that it plays into the reputation you have, and maybe you could have cut him a break, and so maybe you'd want that one back. And Hocevar said, yes, but at the same time, I feel like maybe I could have caught a break at the same time with how big of a run I had. So I think it goes both ways, and maybe that's what we'll talk about. Stenhouse, I don't know if you saw, disagreed with me on X.
They mentioned on the post-race show.
There you go. So that got a lot of chatter there on social media. I then reached out to Stenhouse to try to get some more clarity on, because, this is the part of the show where it's like, hey, 2 guys who have never driven race cars try to dissect what happened on the racetrack. Not the best expertise here, but we're trying to do what we can. So I just said, to please help me not sound like an idiot. What was the bigger issue in Stenhouse's mind, that Hocevar, came with such a run there and jammed it in, and he wasn't expecting that, or that he didn't cut him the break? In Stenhouse's mind, I'm not going to read this verbatim. I don't know that it was intended to be read, on air. I didn't ask for that. So, but just the information he gave me, basically, the bigger issue here was him running into the back, because he felt like 2 laps before that, Hocevar run down from like 10 car lengths back and didn't care if Stenhouse was there or not. And Stenhouse felt like if Hocevar was inside and he knew he had position on him, Stenhouse would have given him the position like he would have given it to anybody else. But he feels like Hocevar just like shoots the gap and prays the hole's going to be there. And sometimes that hole is not there. And so that's where Stenhouse's frustration lies. And that's where, I think the announcers were describing as well of why he would want that back, right? Like, so it all plays into the reputation that he has. But I also think there is a little bit of what I termed on Twitter as the Chastain disease, right? Like where Hocevar is clearly not going to get the benefit of the doubt. Everybody knows he races aggressively. Everybody knows he takes what he can get. And so it pisses everybody off, but nobody's done anything about it yet. Mike Kelly, Stenhouse's crew chief. I don't know if you saw this on X yet. I just said Twitter earlier. You know what I mean? X. He says, man, oh man, looks like this will change a few things. Pull them tight. On to Michigan this week. This Hayek Motorsports team will rebound and remember this one. So I don't think that Stenhouse is going to take kindly to this. However, he is sort of like get in line, right, with Hocevar. Get in line with the long list of people. I was confused that there was even another incident tonight that Hocevar was talking about. I didn't get to ask him about it. I think it might have been with Kyle Busch or something. He was sort of apologetic on the radio. So he seems to find himself in hot water, but he's not going to change the way he races. So what did you make of the Stenhouse incident? Was Hocevar to blame? Stenhouse to blame? What do you think?
I mean, you're right when you say Hocevar is not going to get the benefit of the doubt, but that's the world you create, and you've got to be able to manage it. And it's also, this is part of it, of a young driver who's only in his second full season, learning the rigors of racing at the Cup level. And like Chastain and like other young drivers we've seen, it's about picking and choosing your spots. You don't need to be on the chip all of the time. And the thing I go back to with Chastain was a lot of his mistakes were at the end of races or towards the end of races, like racing for the win. And then it was like, it was more excusable. Like I'm all for aggressive driving, but in the Chastain thing is like, I got it. Like you're racing for the win, you're aggressive. Like I get it. This big picture, you didn't need to do that in that situation. Like if you're faster than him, if you're closing that quickly, you're going to get him anyway. You obviously have a good race car. You don't need to do anything out of the ordinary here. Just keep doing your thing. And looking at the tape, like it looks like he kind of hit him flush. It wasn't like he got underneath him and then they made contact. It was almost a flush hit. And so if I'm Stenhouse, I'd be pissed too. That Ricky's done a really good job of managing races. This is what this team does the last few years, is they really do a good job of managing races and getting whatever they can get. They got a 20th place car, they finished 20th, and they don't make mistakes. Ricky's got moved well past that reputation of Ricky Stenhouse. He's no longer that driver. He's a much smarter, much more mature driver who really
Ricky Spinhouse, by the way. Ricky Spinhouse. You got to get the last name too.
Oh, sorry, my fault. And so he's done a really good job of moving past that now. And he's a much more mature driver. And so like part of it, in the grand scheme of things, like this is just part of it. Like you're going to have this as the young guys figuring this out. And this will sometimes bite Hocevar, but this is what makes him so good. And this is why he's finished second tonight on an intermediate racetrack. This is why he was running third a week ago at Charlotte, another intermediate racetrack. This isn't just like somebody who's like, backing into things. And so I think in the big picture from Hocevar, you mentioned him talking about don't want to have a good points day. I disagree with that. I think he needs to celebrate this. This was a really good night for him because we have talked so much this year about Spire Motorsports, not just the 77, but really the 71 as well, where they've had a lot of speed in their race cars. They have not done a good job of finishing it off. They've had a lot of good opportunities to get good finishes, and it's gone sideways. You go back to Bristol, issue in pit road cost Hocevar top 5 there. Blown engine at Charlotte cost him a potential top 5 there. Tonight, though, they finished it off. And this is a driver who, after the 8th race of the season, was 30th in points. And now he's stringing together consistent finishes, and he's on the cusp of, the playoffs. That, like, be happy about that. Like, you're a second-year driver, and you're doing these things. That's really, really impressive, especially for an organization that is still growing. Like, it's not like Spire Motorsports is some juggernaut, So I think this is deserved celebration. And yeah, you could be frustrated, like, oh man, it would have been nice to get that win, but man, you finished second on an intermediate track. Like that is cause for celebration. You didn't back in this. This was like some fuel mileage thing or something like that, or this didn't turn into a demo derby like a year ago. This was hard fought. Be happy, be excited, learn from this. Big picture, I would try to pick and choose my spots better, but you have to be careful because much like like Chastain or Kyle Larson, other guys, like you have to be really careful about pulling those reins too tight, because what makes them so good is that little bit where they really go for it. And so I don't want to lose that from Carson Hocevar.
Yeah. So Jeff Dickerson, co-owner of Spire, basically said afterwards as much, like, I told him it's okay to be happy, enjoy this and celebrate this. But in terms of making enemies and stuff, so I'm excited about a story. I'll tease it here. I'm doing a story for The Athletic this week with Michigan coming up, host of ours home track. I went up and watched the Truck Series race with Hocevar up in the stands on Friday night. So apparently every truck race and a ton of the Xfinity race as well, Hocevar goes up and sits with the fans, and that's just what he does. So I decided to tag along for the story. And, I talked to Jeff Dickerson as well about Hocevar on Friday. And one thing he had said is basically like, look, I mean, it doesn't bother me that you're rubbing these guys the wrong way. Like, this is the script. This is what's happened to every young driver, right? This is what happens. Keselowski, you name it, right?
Kyle Busch goes on, Harvick, he goes, but
all Dickerson said was, when it happens, when you get paid back or whatever, don't act like a jackass in return. Like, I don't care. Like, keep doing what you're doing, all good, but just don't act like a fool if somebody pays you back for it. So, yeah, I mean, it's he's at the right organization because they're embracing what he's doing. It seems like he's getting close to winning a race, obviously. Like, look at his speed that he had at Charlotte again. Hocevar is going to be a contender before this year's over. And I think that the other drivers, whenever a driver's fast, as you mentioned, this is sort of what happens when a young driver comes on the scene. So we've seen this before, but as you also said, like, the danger is, do you dial somebody back? And like we saw with Chastain, it felt like. So I don't know. It'll be really interesting. But in terms of Stenhouse, though, going back to, I mean, Hayek has been, like, I remember when Stenhouse came to the Tweet Up at Phoenix this year. And so that was the third race of the year or something?
Fourth race of the year.
Fourth? Yeah.
They went Daytona, Atlanta, Coda. And then I think Phoenix, it was either Vegas or Phoenix after that. So
yeah, fourth, pretty early in the year, right? And I remember Ricky at the time, he was like, I think he had said 25 points a race. It was like, he basically said, like, hey, if we get 25 points a race, we can point our way in. Right now, I just did the math as we were talking here. He's got 20.4 points a race. And, now he lost, a bunch of points, and he fell 5 spots, but he had been right in there, right? Like, and that's super impressive because, look, it's really hard, really competitive field. And, I hope that he's able to continue to stay relevant, and because it's been a great story for NASCAR, I think. It might be one of the most underrated stories. AJ Allmendinger also being up there. Unfortunately for him, he was never really able to recover from his penalty that he had in pre-race inspection. Has to start at the back, do a stop and go penalty. He ends up finishing 20th, but so I guess that's somewhat of a rally. But he'd gone a lap down, and yeah. But he was right in the mix before that. So, by the way, don't you love the penalty where they take the guy's hard card?
Oh my God.
So petty.
So good. I love that. It's such a, like, we know because we live it. And so I don't think people realize just how, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, if you're a parent, like how you do that, but it's like just making someone's life just infinitely more difficult in a little subtle way. it's so great. I'm like, no. It's like taking your kid. I don't know. I wish I had a good analogy, but it's such a great thing of like, no. We're going to make you go to the credential line for however number of weeks. And you're going to have to probably stand in line. And by the way, a lot of the crew guys all ride together. They all, a lot of them all ride together in a van and everything like that. So everybody's going to have to go and they're going to have to wait for you. And you're going to have to go through the whole thing. And God bless the people at the credential office, but sometimes things get lost or misplaced, or they don't, they're just kind of maybe a little disorganized. It happens, no big deal. And so it's going to take a little longer than expected. And then, and then they're going to find it. And it's going to be an additional 15, 20 minutes or whatever it is going to be. And everybody's going to be grumbling. It's such a good little subtle thing to do.
Yeah. So, Brian Kozlowski, Brad's brother, who's, being a fill-in spotter while TJ's out. He had a interesting observation as well. He posted on X that it's not really much of a line anymore at the credentials, and they have a special line just for licensed crew members that usually has no one in it. He points out he didn't have a hard card till last week, but he says for him, the biggest pain is having to get your stuff searched because you only have the regular pass. You know how you try to go through security and if we flash hard card and they're like, okay, we don't have to look in your bags then, right? But if you have the paper, the VIP, whatever, they're like, no, we got to go through your whole bag. So that's another, but it's a very personal punishment from NASCAR. It's like, you pissed us off. You made an unapproved adjustment that we, screw you for trying to sneak this by us.
It's pretty blatant.
I honestly think they should do this more. Yeah. They should do this kind of punishment more, because that's going to get somebody's attention. Like, oh man, like I got to do this. They'll give it back. They'll give it back in a few weeks probably. But it's pretty, I don't know. I liked it. Anyway, not to get off topic, but I did enjoy that.
Just a reminder of like, this is our sandbox, just to let you know of like, this is our rules. This is how you got to do it. It's so good.
Yeah. So anyway, so the playoff picture kind of gets a little bit of a shakeup here because Kyle Busch jumps back in, Preece out, Hocevar on the cusp, Stenhouse out, Allmendinger falls one back. So even though the winners have still been straightforward, we're only 12 races to go now. We're starting to get to that point in the season where we are going to have road courses coming up. We do have super speedways coming up. So we'll see how this all shakes out. But right now, I'd have to go back and look, and you have a better memory than I do, but for 14 races past halfway point in the regular season, to not have any unusual type winners.
Well, Barry, I would consider an unusual winner.
Yes, but we all talked about after Vegas. That is what are we going to decide here? Is it a Penske car or not? We say they win, and it's a Penske car.
A second-year driver, like new combination, like it's still like that. It's still. I don't. Again, you look at how we look at our brackets we had before the year. I don't know how many people actually really had Josh Berry in the playoffs this year. And so new crew chief, so that is a surprise to some degree. Maybe not like a completely out of nowhere.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that.
It's a little shocking, but you're right. If you look at the organizations that have won this year, and I even throw Trackhouse in there, like it has been, but pretty by the books. Like we haven't really seen, somebody like, oh my goodness, where this guy, like Eric Jones tonight at one moment was running fourth for a little bit. And you're like, ooh, man, like him winning tonight would have been cause for like, okay, Carson Hocevar winning would have been okay. Wow. We just haven't had one of those. But to your point, we've got 12 races left in the regular season, and 5 of them are in quote wild card tracks, 3 road courses in that mix, 2 drafting tracks. So yeah, it's going to be actually 4 road courses, right? Mexico City, Sonoma, Chicago, Watkins Glen. So 4 road courses and 2 drafting tracks. So 50% of the tracks from here on out, or however you want to deem that, or, it's going to get interesting here because we're going to see some things. I really believe that.
That's a great point. Yeah. You mentioned, we're looking at some of the other comebacks tonight. That was sort of the secondary storyline of the night because Bubba Wallace got some sort of a penalty, right? At some point.
Yep.
He comes back to finish 6th. Larson had like a zillion things happen to him. I mean, like,
they were just
first of all, yeah, like they were way off. He was almost lapped in stage one, somehow didn't get lapped, gets
almost
caught in a
crashed.
wreck. Yeah. I mean, then like, I mean, there's like a zillion things that happen. He comes back to finish 8th. Bell, when Bell was in his incident, I thought he was like going to be potentially wrecked.
Yeah.
Came back to finish top 10. He finished 10th.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm going to praise the next gen car here. Is like this car, one of the benefits of this car is that guys can get into wrecks and we look at wreck and you're like, oh my goodness, how are they going to come? And Bell in no time flat came back through the field. And this car has proved to be tough and durable to a point where it's repairable, and it isn't a race ender. And that's nice to see, where you can still make something out of your day if you get into the wall or something like that. I forgot where I heard this. I think it was with Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin, when Kyle was on Denny Hamlin's. They talked about the previous generation's car and how like you really had to be mindful of that, because if you got into the wall, like your day was shot. I don't know if that's good or bad or however, but I do like to see it where if a guy gets spun out for whatever reason, his day isn't completely over with. And so that is a benefit of this car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So at this point, are you thinking that, I don't know, like, okay, so let's just go through these real quick on some of these bubble guys. Chris Buescher, he's going to make it.
Yes.
He got 30 points back this week.
Yeah,
so
that is a huge thing. He is a very consistent driver, good at a lot of racetracks, sneaky good on road courses, by the way. Won at Watkins Glen a year ago. Yes, he gets in, and I think he wins.
I guess I actually should have started with Alex Bowman, because Bowman,
we need to talk
this was a rough outing for Bowman.
It's been a rough stretch. It's not just an outing. It's a rough stretch. And he went from somebody who was, what was he at one point this year? 3rd in the standings. And now I think over the last 9 races, he's got 6 finishes at 27th or worse.
Yeah, so he was 3rd after after Homestead, and still 4th after Martinsville, which wasn't that long ago. And now he's 12th in points. So since Homestead, when he finished 2nd, he's gone 27th, 35th, 37th, 7th at Talladega, 35th, 5th at Kansas, 29th, 36th. I mean, yeah, that is a stretch that will absolutely take you out of it very quickly. So he's suddenly drifting down toward the playoff line. But I still feel like, I mean, it's a Hendrick car, it's Bowman, like they should be able to make it. I don't know. I mean,
but how many times, and this is the thing with Alex, like there are stretches where he looks really, really good. And then there are stretches where it goes the other direction. And yet again, we're talking about him being on the playoff bubble. And that's just, it feels like he's perpetually on this playoff bubble year in and year out. And this can go sideways in a hurry, because you can find yourself on the bubble. And then we talk about guys, a host of ours, the Allmendingers, whomever that those guys outside, they start winning races. All of a sudden, that gap gets even smaller. And so this is just a really precarious spot for him to be in, especially, again, when you look at the 5, you look at the 24 and what they're doing on a weekly basis, and even the 9, they're not winning, but they're still running well. Why does the 48 continue to find itself in this position?
So I'm going to say there's going to be maybe 3 new winners from outside the bubble right now. So I'm gonna say it's going to be an Allmendinger is going to win a road course. SVG is going to win a road course. You can't tell me that SVG is not going to win one of the 4 road course races, right? Even though he is tied for second to last in points with Cole Custer and Riley Herbst. I think SVG is going to win one, and then maybe a McDowell, wins a road course or super speedway or something. So I think you're going to have at least 3 guys who are not in the top 20 even in points right now, or I guess Allmendinger's 19th.
But even, can I just make a point really quick? Like even Kyle Busch winning a race, who's technically in the playoffs right now, But even Kyle Busch, who I think at times at speed, if he wins a race, he shoots above Bowman too, and that knocks Bowman down. You know what I mean?
I don't know. Kyle Busch in particular, like he's in right now by 2 points over Priest, but I don't know. Can they put a full race together? Like, can they really put a full race together right now?
I at the end of the day, it's Kyle Busch, and I just go back like if they just need to do it once. You know, we saw what they can do at the Southern 500 a year ago. They've had speed. I just am going to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I know you're going to laugh at me, but I would like Austin Dillon is. We always talk about Austin Dillon in this spot. In Austin Dillon's career, he's got this knack for just finding a way to win a race kind of randomly, whether it's a Daytona or a Texas or a Richmond, you know, like that organization has done this before where they just find a way to win a race out of the blue.
I know, but I think what we're really seeing this season is it's so hard to, again, put an entire race together, right? Like to get all the details perfect, to get your pit stops right, to get your strategy right, to get every restart correct, to keep your track position. I mean, man, it's tough. I mean, look at Chase Briscoe, right? Like he leads a career high for an intermediate track, 51 laps, and he ends up finishing 17th, right? Like I don't know if they went the wrong way in their adjustments or just lost track position or strategy or what happened, but like when you know, it's so hard to put a whole race together from start to finish. And so, yeah, we can see guys that have speed at times, and you can see that it get teased, you know, like Eric Jones tonight. You're like, oh, wow, he has top 5 speed. But again, so to finish it off, it's really hard. So I don't know.
But again, on that conversely though, Chase Briscoe came in tonight off of 2 top 5 finishes, and all it takes is once to get that to flip that and to move forward. And he wasn't optimistic about his car pre-race. Like he just didn't think he had a lot of speed in his race car. So it seems like, they used the track position to lead some laps early, but once they, started sliding backwards, they were never going to be able to hang around.
It's interesting because I didn't even realize that this was going to be Denny's 700th start, and such a huge deal was made about Jimmy's 700 start. Part of it was, it was the place where, he first made his first start, but he had a special logo for it and everything. And it was like 700. And the other media people, Kelly Crandall and people like that, started asking Denny, oh, 700. I'm like, oh, it is? Like, I totally missed that somehow. And so here's this guy, and he said, he really would have loved to win in 700. But once he was racing with Blaney, and once they kind of pulled away together, and then once Blaney pulled away from him, he realized it really wasn't in the cards. But man, the guy's still, speaking of showing speed, he's sort of right there. Like you can just see they're still contenders. Like, I could see them going on a run at some point. Now it's going to be tough with road courses coming up and stuff, but they're right there.
Yeah, it's a little. We kind of forgot them a little bit because they had a really tough stretch in May. But you look at their results and you're like, really, where they've been at? But you got to look deeper. They finished 38th at Texas, but he was running, in among the leaders and had a fast car at Texas when he had a mechanical issue. 36th at Kansas, same thing, right? And then Charlotte, they didn't get fuel in the car on the last pit stop, second to last pit stop, and that ended up having to make an extra stop there. And so they've had speed week in and week out. They really haven't had a bad race. They just haven't had the finish to correspond with that. Denny is certainly in the mix. And if you're going to make a list of drivers who you feel like are championship contenders, Denny is certainly on that list, along with Blaney, along with Logano, along with Larson, along with Byron, and I would put Bell in there too.
What else from Nashville do you want to discuss before we move on to other topics?
Let's see here. Let me look at my list really quick. We got to give another shout out to Eric Jones for just a great run tonight. Just really impressive. Top 32 in the preseason or the in-season tournament got locked in tonight. I thought that was interesting. And SVG didn't make it, which I thought was really fascinating because if SVG would have made it, there was 2 road courses in the bracket, Chicago and Mexico, or Chicago and Sonoma. Like that's a bracket buster right there. Brad Keselowski right now is ranked 32nd. The first race is Atlanta. Brad Keselowski is going to like pull an upset. Like, I mean, he is.
Yeah, but so this is okay. I didn't know that they were doing it like this, and I don't really understand why. If you know why, please tell me. So I'm confused. So tonight set the well, you sound like you're confused too, based on what you just said. But so basically, okay, so they locked in the top 32,
Yep.
right? But the next 3 weeks now are going to like it's I think it's like a mini points thing. They're going to add up the points for the next 3 weeks, and that is going to be the seeding. So instead of just saying, okay, the in-season tournament is going to be 1 through 32, and that's the seeding, like that's the bracket, it's all going to be mixed up because it's your points over these next 3 weeks that sets the seeding. It has nothing to do with your place in the standings.
Yeah.
Only the place in the standings locked you in. Why wouldn't they just do the top 32 in the standings and then do 1 versus 32? Because you're saying he could be pulling an upset, but he might be Keselowski. If he has a good 3 weeks, he might be one of the top seeds. You don't know.
Well, it could be. I don't expect that to be the case, but yeah, I mean, it could be. Why I've heard is it gives a little bit more juice to the 3 races leading in, and kind of gives you people excitement, and it just gives another wrinkle to it, if you will.
No, I mean, people are going to be watching, going, "Oh man, this must be mean a lot for this person's seeding in the in-season tournament that's coming up. Wow, they're going to be a great seed now that they got a top 5 today." I just don't. I don't know that that's. I think you just could have done make it simpler and just do. I don't know, whatever. Maybe it'll work out fine, but
I'm not getting all.
It's going to be, but yeah, but it's going to be confusing if like, let's say like Zane Smith had some flashes of speed tonight, right? Like, so let's say Zane Smith has a great 3 weeks and he's like the number 5 seed going into the tournament. People are going to be like, what, huh? And then so he gets knocked out in the first round or something, and it's like an upset that Zane Smith got knocked out. Like, it's a weird narrative, I guess is what I'm saying. But anyway, it's fine, whatever. It's not that big. Most of the drivers are like Chris Buescher's like, I don't care. Like, I don't even know what brackets are. Like, he was talking about it this week, and he's like, it starts next week? And they're like, no, it doesn't start next week. He's like, oh, okay. I'm not going to pay attention to it.
Yeah, it's
not I'm really. Like, well, I'm literally like, I was like, it's $1 million. You can win $1 million though. He's like, yeah, but I don't want it to change anything we do for a race. Like, I don't want to change our strategy. We're worried about the playoffs, not in-season tournament. Fair.
I think it's going to be different for different people at different. If you're locked in the playoffs already, maybe you're a little bit more aware of it, and also you can say that now. But as you get into like the semifinals or something like that, I think maybe it becomes more attainable. Let's get to maybe then their tone changes. But I also 100% get that of like you've got to look at the bigger picture here, and we can't be silly of like, hey, we're going to chase trying to beat this guy for a position when it potentially could bite us in the butt and cost us a playoff spot.
Yeah, but I do agree with your point though that SVG not being in the in-season tournament, that's tough.
Yeah.
Well, should we do the poll now?
Yeah, let's do it.
Because Big Joe Wall, he was at the race, the truck race Friday night. Big Joe Wall, who keeps score, and we were talking because you won last week. You were more optimistic about the Charlotte result than I was, and you were correct. It made the 90% club, and so the score is now 9-6 me, and so I'm only up by 3. If I had won that, I would have been up by 5.
Yeah.
So the swing there from 5 to 3 is quite significant, because if I had gone up by 5, it was pretty much game over. But 3, you're still in it. So this is again a tricky one. I think I actually might be a little bit more optimistic on this race than some other people were. I think what happens is people tend to be worked up whenever there's a dirty air type race or no passing type race. People get really worked up about the car, and they get really mad about the car. And so I think you'll have some people, even though Blaney's a popular winner, they'll go, I don't know. So I'm not sure how this is going to shake out, but I typed a number and I'll have to stick with it. So are you ready to reveal? No,
Yeah. Go Hank. Yeah. Ugh.
I have a feeling we're going to be in the same range.
I don't know.
So
I'm probably all right. Go ahead. Ready? 71.
64, 71. Okay, 64 for me,
No.
71 for Jordan. I don't hate your guess at all. I don't know if it's going to be that high. I think it might be a little bit lower, but
I have no
Blaney's
feel.
popular winner, so
Yeah, I have no feel. Like I wasn't. It wasn't. Again, it wasn't. This was not a barn burner by any means, but it was. It's fine. It's fine.
Justin Allgaier won the closed out a race. Man, imagine if he's been so good this year. I mean, he's been so good for many years, and there's so many races where he hasn't been able to close it out. Here's one where he did. You
Yeah.
know, it just shows you what can happen if it's a clean race. And then Raja Karuth, big win for him in the Truck Series, first win in over a year, and you know, it'll be interesting to see. You know, that was a great race, by the way, and it wasn't the end of that truck race. It wasn't even like there wasn't even a pass for there wasn't even a lead change, but it was so good because you knew Heim was running him down. Here comes, you know, Riggs, and like, oh, you're like, oh man, what's going to happen here? And ultimately, you know, Raja is able to withstand the pressure and hold them off. You know, a lot of young drivers throw that away in those situations. So I thought that was big for Raja, and Raja at that point had fallen out of the
Playoffs.
top
He was
12 in the
well
playoffs.
behind too. Like he wasn't just like on the cut too. Like he needed some help.
Yeah.
This was
So
a nice win. And to defend off Corey Heim, who's, you know, week in, week out among the fastest, and Lane Riggs is certainly in that mix as well. That was a really, really good job of managing that race in a really tough spot for Raja. That was a big win. It was a really, really big win for him. And it's different than Las Vegas. Las Vegas was a strategy thing a little bit, and it wasn't as tense coming down the stretch. Been really easy for a young driver to make a mistake there and overdrive, and you're looking in the mirror more than you're looking forward. He did a really, really good job.
Jordan, there was some news this week, and not just the news that they might raise the horsepower. By the way, that real quick, that's great. I think we've talked about it before, but I think everybody should temper their expectations for if they add 80, 100 horsepower. I don't think it's going to. The drivers this week were saying, hey, directionally, it's great, it's better, but
it's not going to be to a level likely that is going to make a difference. And there's other things that beyond just the horsepower that are going to be a factor. Like it's a piece of the puzzle, but this is a much bigger thing that needs to happen. It can't just go up incrementally, and you have to do other things in the car probably as well too.
Yeah. Well, the news I was referring to was some news that we wrote about on The Athletic about Jim France. So Jim France, and by the way, I think Jeff Dickerson is the guest on Door Bumper Clear this week. So I'm sure Jeff will shed some more light on the situation or get asked about it. Why don't you? I don't know. Do you want to start? Tell the story, or
I mean, sure. So Jim France was down the road. Jim France wanted to enter a driver from his IMSA team in a Cup Series race at Sonoma. He initially went to Hendrick Motorsports and said, hey, this is something I would like to do. Fund this. Hendrick Motorsports couldn't do it because they're at the 4-team limit. They can't run a fifth car. Hendrick Motorsports then basically said, hey, Spire Motorsports is an option. Spire Motorsports agreed. Spire Motorsports was going to run a fourth car, basically funded by Jim France, in a Cup Series race at Sonoma. As we started reporting this and asking questions about this, the deal fell apart. Why it fell apart, I'll leave that up to you. But as we started asking questions about this, and it became known to Jim France that people within the garage were upset by this, and there was a lot of people that were very, I think uneased is probably the best word. They were very uncomfortable and uneased about this situation of a league owner entering a car or having a partnership in a car that they were competing against. And we have seen all of the issues that are going on in IndyCar in the last few weeks, and it's just kind of a coincidental timing as well. It's fair to say that if what was going on in Indy didn't happen, I don't know if the uneasiness would have been lessened to a degree, but it certainly didn't help. And so the deal is off. But Jim France was well down the road to partnering or funding a car in an upcoming race.
Yeah, and so the debate then becomes like, well, is this bad or not, right? Like, and personally, my feeling is that the optics of this were not a great look if he was going to go through with this, right?
Yeah.
To me, I think that NASCAR, look, we all know NASCAR fans are always looking for signs of favoritism. They're always looking for a caution call that, oh, that benefited this guy or whatever, right? And so Jim France and NASCAR already partnered with Hendrick once to do Garage 56, right? And now, as he wants to get his IMSA driver Jack Aitken in a Cup race, he goes back to Hendrick again, back to Chevy again, and then by association Spire to run the car for them. The question is just, it just sort of becomes like, why would you do this? Why would you put yourself in this position in the first place? You could say, look, do I believe that it was above board? You know, I think that's fair. Like, okay, maybe truly he just wanted to, he believes in this racer and he wanted to get him in a ride. So he wanted to pay for the ride to get him into a Cup race in Sonoma, blah, blah, blah. But when you are co-owner of NASCAR, the CEO, by the way, you're in a lawsuit with two of your teams over charter stuff.
The timing is bad. The timing is terrible.
I just don't see what would be, why would you want to go through with this? I just don't.
So that is and it's great that you bring this up, because as we were reporting the story, that was the fundamental question we asked, was why now? Why are you doing this? And there really wasn't a clear answer. I mean, the answer was always Jim's a racer. Jim loves to race. It's always something he's wanted to do. He's talked about it. He's got a like literally during the charter negotiations was like very steadfast of like, no, I want a provision in there that I can own a NASCAR team if I want one. All right. If I want to charters. So the answer apparently is just he wanted to do this. Like, it wasn't anything nefarious. I really honestly don't believe that he like some ulterior motive here. He wasn't playing like, 3D chess. He just wanted to do this because this is what he likes to do. He loves to race. But again, as you say, Jeff, the optics of it were really uncomfortable. And you go back to the Garage 56 thing and how that was presented to Toyota and Ford at the time. It was a very blunt, hey, we're doing this. It wasn't a, hey, we're thinking about this, or we're kind of mulling this over, or would you like to participate in some way? Or, is this something you'd be interested? It was we're doing this with Chevy, with Hendrick. See ya. I mean, so it's just so that you factor that in as well. And it's just, again, like, it just doesn't make sense of why you do this with everything else going on. It's just unnecessary noise at a time when you don't need it.
And to be clear, I mean, this wasn't going to be Jim France with this Action Express team from IMSA fielding the car themselves. It was going to be a Spire car, from everything Jeff Dickerson told us. I mean, Jeff Dickerson said, it's my car, it's my people. Yeah. Like, he was very emphatic that, he didn't cut Jim France a deal. Jim France was paying for this to happen, and
going rate, not a cut rate deal or anything like that.
So that's all fine. I just don't think why, if you're the head of NASCAR, why even put yourself in this position, given had this gone forward, every single caution would have been, dissected and all this stuff. And it's just like, oh, who did that benefit? Did that benefit Jim France's car? And, it just would have been like, oh, like just would have been exhausting. So, I don't know. So the deal's off for now. It doesn't mean it's dead forever, because, as you said, there's a provision in there that he can own and operate charters. Yeah. So maybe he can have a little bit less of a conflict of interest situation than we've seen in IndyCar lately, but doesn't always go well.
It's just not worth it. It's just not worth the risk.
Jordan, one thing, if you don't mind me talking about this. I didn't get to mention it on the podcast last week. I know it's a little bit late now, but I just wanted to share a little bit of insight into the Hall of Fame process, because I heard Tommy Baldwin share his viewpoint on DBC this last week, and I've gotten a lot of questions. So I post my ballot, and then I'll get a lot of questions being, well, why didn't you vote for this person? Why didn't you vote for this person? And I hadn't heard other people talk about it in terms of like why things happen a certain way. So I thought maybe I could shed some light here. So this is only my second year voting on the panel, but I've noticed for these 2 years. So what happens is you go in the room, right? I think there's like 48 people in the room, and they start talking about this. They have this discussion, and people will stand up and get the microphone, and they will advocate for certain people. So it doesn't take very long, 10 or so, 15, 20 minutes, and you can tell the direction the room is starting to go, because people are saying, I'm voting for this guy. Here's my take on this. Like, I want this guy, whatever, right? So let's say I go in and I have a particular person in mind that I'm thinking of voting for, which has been the case in both the previous years. And then I see that the room, in the voting room, everybody's talking about other people, right? So like nobody's bringing up some of these other guys. So then it becomes a situation where, okay, you could you could vote for the person you were going to vote for and basically throw your vote away, right? Throw your vote into the ether. Or you could use your vote to weigh in and sway the outcome of the people that are being talked about, right? So like essentially the room, the Hall of Fame voting room of the people talking are essentially almost narrowing it down. And then to me, it's like, okay, then you vote that way. So like this year, in terms of the modern era one, it was a lot of talk for Jeff Burton, a lot of talk for Harry Gant, right? And the Kurt Busch part of this, as Tommy Baldwin mentioned, some people were very opposed to Kurt Busch getting in based on his previous indiscretions and bad behavior, right? Like Tommy Baldwin said that his take was, I don't think we should reward this. And by being a first ballot Hall of Famer, I think you shouldn't just excuse whatever has happened off the track, and how you treated people when you're going in the Hall of Fame. There was people that said there should be a higher standard of people that go in for a first ballot Hall of Famer. I think though that everybody knew Kevin Harvick's coming in next year. Martin Truex coming in the year after that, at least going to be on the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so suddenly it's like, okay, here we have a couple of first Hall of Famers coming in soon. So, are we really gonna, he might have to wait a few years if we don't put him in now. That was one thing. So basically the room was coming down to Burton, Gant, and Busch. I voted for Burton and Busch. I think Burton had a lot of momentum, but also I think people, look at, hey, Harry Gant, he's in his 80s. Hey, people want to feel like let's get these guys in while they're here and they can appreciate it. So I think that helped shape the conversation as well in that case. But I'll be honest, like in terms of what I said in the room, I said, listen, Kurt Busch, out of all the drivers I've dealt with in my career, probably the biggest asshole, right? Like I'm just saying, I mean, he mellowed in his later years, but for a lot of time, he was not fun to deal with, right? And I said, yet I'm still voting for him. Throw that aside. We're here to vote on the Hall of Fame. Kurt Busch was the only person on that list that had a championship. Kurt Busch was the only person on the list that won Daytona 500. He won 13 more Cup races than anybody else that was eligible. So I'm like, I'm voting for Kurt Busch. I don't care if he was a jerk for a lot of his career. Okay, you're telling me that everybody in there. I mean, Tony Stewart was not so great to deal with for a lot of times, right? So,
Mhm.
but
A lot of
I
that.
just think the for me, the job that we're in there to do is to, and I get that people view the Hall of Fame, there's no criteria. So I get that people view it as like, okay, well, you have to be a Hall of Fame person, maybe too. I don't know. But for me, it was like, it was very straightforward. Kurt Busch was my lock. And then it was just a question of the other one. And I think so. I just wanted to share that sort of, because people are like, why didn't you vote for Biffle? I mean, Biffle wasn't even like, he wasn't one of the three main people that was being talked about in the room. So if I'm going to vote for Biffle or somebody like that, it's just like it's like when you're voting in the presidential election for like the third party type person. Like, I guess it's like, do you want to weigh in on one of the two people that's probably going to win, or do you want to just toss your vote over here? So I chose to use my vote to influence but it actually didn't work because Gant got in instead of Burton. But I think Burton
Yeah.
will probably get in soon. So anyway,
I agree with your ballot. I mean, I would have done the same thing with Kurt Busch, and you can flip a coin almost between Harry Gann and Jeff Burton. Personally, I would have gone Harry Hyde, and I don't understand for the life of me why Harry Hyde is not already in the Hall of Fame already. It's ridiculous.
he got some mentions, but I think the
It's just
drivers, yeah.
But I'm not even talking like mentioned. The dude needs to be in the Hall of Fame. Like that's a whole different conversation. And that's my beef with this whole process. And I'd love to get your thoughts on that. I thought you did the right thing. And it wasn't like, to me, I guess you could maybe have that conversation if the resumes are fairly equal and you're looking for like something to tip the scale. But Kurt's accomplishments were so far above anyone else's that was up for consideration. It's like, it's a no-brainer. And it's a terrible, terrible precedent to set when you have somebody who's got as many wins as he has, a championship, a Daytona 500, a Coke 600, and did all of these things, and you're not going to put him in. Like that's a bad precedent. And I'm glad at the end of the day, this is a non-issue. Everybody just kind
of. Well, I'm glad that Tommy on DBC decided to share his viewpoint, because like I respect why people feel that way, and I think a lot of people in the room, they have different criteria. Again, there's nothing that says on the thing, vote for the person who you think was the best driver or the most worthy or the
competition related or so. Yeah, I get it. And
it doesn't say. So it's up to you what your personal criteria is. So if people didn't feel like, some people may feel like, okay, well, he gave a lot to the sport, but he detracted from it, is some feeling, but too. So, I get that, but I just feel like his accomplishments on track superseded anything else. So,
and I would say, even like, if you want to talk about the off track stuff, fine, that's fine. But let's also not ignore the fact that off the track, he built organizations and made them better. Like 2311, Stewart Haas Racing, Chip Ganassi Racing, like all organizations that were fundamentally better because he was there and did a lot of behind the scenes stuff. He also did a lot of stuff with veterans. I mean, so like, if you're going to name all of this other stuff that he did, that's fine. But let's not also ignore the other stuff as well. And so ultimately, I'm really just glad that it's not a thing, because I've got some issues already with the process of the Hall of Fame. And this would have been that. I would have been very disappointed.
Yeah. Don't forget Furniture Row too. He almost won that Sonoma race that one time. Remember that?
100%,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Can I ask you a question really quick about the Hall of Fame?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe this is probably too in the weeds, but how do you feel about having to put in 3 people every year? Would you be open to going to like a system like baseball where you can put in any number of people you want per year, as long as they hit a percentage, whether that's 65% or whatever that is. And that way you get more guys, like a Harry Hyde, for example, is going to be sitting out there for a while potentially. But like, if you've got a year where you've got like 5 or 6 guys, you can put them in. And other years you may only have 1 or 2.
Yeah. First of all, I've corrected. Phoenix Racing is the one where he almost won the Sonoma race. I forgot
The
that.
Sonoma race is Phoenix.
Yeah. Sorry.
But still, what he did at Furniture Row, though, and
Yeah.
how he made that team was like night and day.
Yeah. I see what you're saying about that ballot, where, you have to meet the percentage, but I'm also, because, wasn't there at least 1 year in baseball where like only like nobody
Yeah,
got in or only
yeah,
one person got
yeah.
in?
It
Or like,
happens, and I'm okay with
yeah,
that. Like, that's fine.
is it? I mean, I don't, does the Hall of Fame?
But you want it to be exclusive. It's not a everyday.
Yeah,
You want it to be special. You don't want it to just be like open to everybody. You want it to mean something when you get in.
I just think it would change the way that people have already been voting on it. Because like if you took the modern era ballot now, there's a ton of people you'd vote for,
Yeah.
right? Like, so I don't know. I think you have such long careers in NASCAR that we're still trying to play catch up, I think, on getting some of the pioneers in, but that's why they have the pioneer ballot. Um, I almost think that there should be though, like a crew member or crew chief
Sure.
separate
Love it.
part of the ballot, like just like how they do modern era,
Sure.
pioneer, do
Absolutely.
drivers for those, but then a crew member,
Love
you know,
it. Yeah.
so,
Like a Jake Elder.
engine builder. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jake Elder.
Yeah,
Because like Randy Dorton's on. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All guys who, by the way, deserve to be in already. I mean, people don't realize what these guys have done. In the case of Harry, and I'm sorry, I'm a broken record here, but like the case of Harry Hyde and Randy Dorton, they were pillars of building Hendrick Motorsports into what it is today. Like, and
Yeah. So the problem is like whenever, they're on the ballot, obviously, right? But like as long as there's going to be drivers on the ballot,
yeah,
drivers are sort of going to, yeah. So
I like
that's a
your
tough.
idea of kind of maybe divvying it up a little bit of like, hey, we're going to make sure we put in a mechanic or a crew chief or whomever, however you want to word it. That's fine.
Yeah. 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 What else? What else we got here? Anything else you want to talk about?
Michigan? You excited for Michigan?
I'm excited for Michigan. You'll be there.
I'll be there. You'll be there. We'll be there together. It'll be fun.
They have radio rooms there, so
that'll be.
We won't have to do it from a hotel.
We've already got it reserved, by the way. I already called ahead and reserved us a room.
No, there's lots of radio rooms there.
I know, but
endless. You take your pick.
I understand that, but I'm on top of things, and I, proactively got us a room. Hopefully, they supply. They give us like a bottle of champagne or something else, and some steak dinner or something.
Oh my gosh, have you been to Michigan track?
I have been to Michigan. I was there. 2022. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep, that was Harvick.
I like that track.
Yeah, Harvick snapped his winless streak there.
Nice. Okay.
That'd be good.
Well, all right, yeah, and then Mexico. There was a lot of Mexico talk this week at the track, but I will save that for our post-Michigan discussion. We'll get a lot into Mexico City because, man, we're drivers. Some drivers are taking the process very seriously to get ready for the altitude over 7,000 feet, and then other drivers are like, I have no interest in this whatsoever. So they're just going to go. So anyway, well, it's 1 a.m. on the East Coast.
1 a.m.
12 Central here. So for those of you who watched on the live stream, thanks for staying up late with us. For those of you who are listening on your morning commute, good morning. Hope you have a great day and a great week ahead. And thanks for listening. We will talk to you next time on the Teardown. See you, everybody.